So, Stu, I put your bio up there while people were waiting, and it's quite extensive, and I'm not sure I can even do it justice. So, why don't you try to talk about your background, and I'd like you to be sure and cover just, I mean, it's extremely long, but I would like you to touch on uh, the work you did with Mike Rupert. I also would like you to discuss, of course, the Bush crime family and all of that. And we really have time to go into whatever detail you would like to go into here on all these different subjects, as well as the Denver airport. You're just sort of uncovering that, the underground base there, and it looks like you've also gotten involved in some mind control stuff. So let's just run the gamut here and welcome everyone. This is Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot. I'm very happy to be here today with Stew Webb, and hopefully we will make it through without too many problems with the audio and the video. Okay? So go right ahead, Stu.
Well, I want to thank you for having me, Kerry, and I want to thank our mutual friend for, should we say, connecting us up. And but to get into my background for the edification of all the listeners, I'm still trying to get you up on the other screen, but I'm not getting you, Kerry. But my background was I married into the Bush crime syndicate I met the girl Carrie Millman in 1981, and in 1980, and in 1981 I married her, and she had a very estranged relationship with her parents. She claimed that her parents, being Jewish, didn't want anything to do with me because I was a Gentile and they wouldn't accept that. And she had been previously married. Since my divorce to her, she's been married an additional 2 times that I'm aware of. And all 4 relationships ended up in massive violence. We had a daughter. All the relationships were identical almost. 3 years of pretty much steady marriage, good relationship, and then the last turned to total hell. And during the last that I was married to her, she was pregnant during the period of time that she was pregnant, chased me through the house with a gun, attempted to murder our daughter after she was born, was ordered by child welfare in the state of Texas to undergo psychiatric evaluations within 7 days. I had taken her 3 shrinks. She would never go back. Her first husband took her to 3. Her third husband took her to a couple. Her 4th husband, etc. All identical. I've talked to all of them. Basically, what happened was she had disappeared the next day. This was in 1984 in August. She disappeared with my daughter. I got served divorce papers within a number of days. She had a warrant for her arrest for mental disturbance. Her father bought her way out of it, basically. A year later, they terminated my parental rights in Dallas, Texas, on what they called a default judgment, where I was never notified. I went ballistics as a father, saying, you can't terminate my parental rights. This woman tried to murder our daughter, and she had a warrant. This judge, he covered it up. Judge Linda Thomas, Dallas, Texas. I found out within that last year in 1985 that basically her father had given the judge a loan out of Republic Finance, Republic Bank of Dallas, to her election campaign that she never paid back, which was an out-and-out bribe. But in Texas at the time, you could contribute to cases or contribute to a judge while you had a case pending before him, which is just really illegal. But this is what was allowed in Texas. But she had terminated 1,802 men's parental rights that year. She was a lesbian. She had only terminated 2 women's rights. She was doing it for money. This judge was just totally out of control. But I had missed the 30-day appeal time. I was being told by attorneys in Dallas it would cost me $250,000. I'd have to double the $75,000 contribution and make a contribution for $150,000. Plus, they wanted themselves $100,000. I didn't have that kind of money. I was just a small building contractor doing my thing in life and making better than the average wage and so forth. And that's what basically started me off in my quest and looking at the background of my former father-in-law. because I figured if I shut the money off, I had an attorney tell me that I'd spend $1 million ever trying to have a relationship with my own daughter, and that I might as well hang it up, either that or plan on spending $1 million. And I thought everybody was nuts down in Dallas, so I said, I'm out of here. And I'd grown up in Kansas City, Missouri, Independence area at the time, did a lot of work in Overland Park, Johnson County, and from the 1975, had a real estate license when I first got in business. I met her when I was 25, got in business when I was 22, building new homes. I was aggressive. I moved to Dallas because of the point structure here in Kansas City. We were paying 16 points to close a house, where in Dallas and Denver and other places there were 12 points. Now, before I married this girl, I'd met her parents one time in Denver, Colorado, because I was telling her, Kerry, that I wanted to live in one of the two cities because of the point structure and the business and so forth. That's how I basically got involved. By 1986, I'm going to the FBI with information on her father money laundering. During the period of time that I was married to Kerry Millman, she had mentioned in the last 3 months of the marriage, because it was so rocky, she made a comment that her father was a mob don. And of course, I'm like, oh yeah, thanks a lot for telling me now your dad's some kind of mob don. And I never knew any of this, but I began to look at the background of his business partners, mainly Larry Mizell and Phil Wynn, because when I visited with her folks, met them the one time before I married her, they were having a big party. Phil Wynn goes to Washington to become the FHA commissioner. And he was the one later I got an indictment on in 1991 through the independent prosecutor, Arlen Adams, who was appointed on the HUD scandal as a result of me. The documents are up on my website, stewwebb.com. It's under table of contents in the far right column. You can see a letter from Congress thanking me on the congressional investigations, etc. But Arlen Adams was appointed as a result of me. But in the 1986 timeframe, I'd gone to the FBI. Kerry had never been arrested in my life for anything. I mean, I got a couple speeding tickets and maybe a stop sign, something like that, but I'd never done anything wrong, and I don't even break the law today. I just try to live what God would want us to do and do the right thing. But all of a sudden, I'm being arrested on DUIs. I wasn't even drinking. It was just constantly blowing in breath tests and proving my innocence, but yet I was being hauled in. And it was all because I went to the FBI and turned in my former father-in-law, Leonard Millman, not having any idea who this guy was. And to explain to everybody who he is or what he was before his reported death in 2004, he's one of the 100 Illuminati bankers, it turned out to be. One of the 100 richest people on the planet. The one of the 100, the 1%, less than 1% actually, but one of the 100s that control 90% of the bulk of the wealth of the world now. Now, to give you an idea, the timeline escalates. By 1989, I'm still going after this guy, thinking if I shut his money down, he's illegal. She told me he's a mobster of some type. I'm looking at every kind of background, everything I can find on, from my real estate building background, looking at all those bare land tracts. And I'm finding that this guy has like $4 to $5 billion worth of bare land in Denver, Colorado, and all over the Colorado area. I'm saying to myself, how can this guy have $4 to $5 billion in his partner Albert Rose and Milrose Construction and so forth, Milrose Investment Company, when Forbes magazine's reporting the richest people to be $1 billion, $1.5 billion, and these guys are sitting out there with several billion in land tracts. So I dug, and I finally, after going to the FBI a second time, repeated arrest, all charges dismissed against me. In many cases, they did what the prosecutors call a nollis pro, where they actually dropped the charges, spending $2,000 in bonds and towing in my vehicle and playing all the game. I'd already racked up by 1991, I think it was. I'd racked up nearly $50,000 in attorney fees and so forth. I racked up another $50,000 in long-distance phone calls digging on this guy. Secretary of State's office consistently and so forth in Colorado and other states around there, Nevada, where I'd learned that he was doing business in. So this was move on into the time frame of 1988. I contacted the HUD Inspector General, a man by the name of Chris Creer, Assistant Inspector General at HUD. and I'd given him information what I'd found, that here's all these HUD projects, these apartment complexes that Leonard Millman owned with other people. And that, I said, I looked at your Inspector General's report, which is a semi-annual report that the HUD Inspector General does before Congress each year. And it was showing Philip Wynn, Leonard Millman's partner, and they're getting unusual amounts of apartment units and so forth. And they'd been mentioned previously, starting in about 1982 or 83. So it spun from there to where I was working with the HUD Inspector General, and he turned me over to the congressional investigators who were looking at this thing on their own in a different angle, should we say. And I had gone to him, or worked at Lisa Phillips up on the Hill on what they call the Housing and Urban Development Committee, HUD Committee on Oversight. And so I started working with them, providing them the information. They wanted me to come public and testify before Congress, and I said, no. I said, this guy, I think, some kind of mob don. I'm finding all this property. I'm finding people that he's screwed all over, subcontractors that he's ripped off and different stuff. I'd prefer to keep my name out of it. Let's see what we can do about bringing them to justice. And they were robbing HUD heavily. They were getting, at the time, 8 out of 10 HUD dollars, which was a tremendous amount of money. And, of course, the congressional investigators were all over me on this. They wanted everything I had. I had polled over 10,000 apartment complexes at the time, had found 10,000 apartment units, each apartment being a unit, that they had basically stolen from HUD during this period of time, from 1981 up to 1988. So what had transpired is one of the gals on one of the committees, the HUD committee, had said, Stu, we've been brought to our attention by a reporter by the name of Pete Bruton, who later I contributed to the book. My name didn't appear. Margie Sloan's did with Time magazine. She was a researcher working for Peter, and I got her a job with Time because Time entered into the equation. Jonathan Beatty, that did the stories on Silverado and BCCI, which was all interconnected to my ex-in-laws. They owned Silverado, and they were involved heavily in BCCI and the Saudi Arabian Investment Corp with Charles Keating and all that. But she had said, would you like to talk to this reporter? He'd keep your name out of things. I said, sure. So that's how I got connected up there, finding out about his savings and loan stuff going on. And then it turned out to be that I ended up connected through other people along the way, other investigators up on the Hill, a couple other committees that were looking at not only the savings and loan and HUD, but they were also looking at the Denver International Airport, which was turning out to be massive fraud. And, of course, they built a secret underground, which I later found a whistleblower, one of the construction superintendents that came forth to me in 1994, and made a video. It's up on Facebook, on my Facebook page. You can click on the video and review the video. We put it on TV 59 in Denver. I think it was in 1994. I'm not sure of the month. But prior to this, back to the 1989 through 1991 time frame, I had the opportunity to go before congressional investigations on Silverado, on HUD, on the Denver airport, and on what they called the Keating 5. Actually, it was called the MDC 200. And this is where I got Jonathan Beatty with Time magazine to top a story that appeared in August the 14th of 1991. It's under stewwebb.com. Go to the front page, go to table of contents, and go in and look at savings and loans. In the third column over, that's in alphabetical order.
Okay, Stu, I appreciate this. You obviously have a huge background, and I am actually trying to get myself on the screen here. I'm not sure what's going on with this camera. It's kind of bizarre. At any rate, I think that this works more or less. I'm kind of like cut off in the corner. I don't even know if you can see me, but anyway.
I can't see at all. The only thing I've got is a photo of you here.
Okay, that's fine. But
if you would like to reconnect and try it again,
no, it doesn't matter that much. They can see me on live stream just a bit in the corner, which is actually okay too. The idea here is though that you are kind of giving us almost a laundry list of incidents, and a lot of people who maybe weren't following your work all the way back then are going to be a little bit lost at this point, I'm afraid. So I just want to slow you down just a little bit. And I know that you're talking about the Denver airport and you were talking about HUD, and somehow those two connected. Can you back up a little bit and explain how, you became an investigator, or you started working with a private investigator?
No, not at all. I turned it into, from my building background, I just looked at it as a business, saying, I can't stop these people. I can't have a relationship with my daughter. I want to. I was concerned about my daughter and her health, of course, after her mother tries to murder her. And that's the reason I got into this, after being told it cost me $250,000 to ever see my child or more. So you move up from the 1984 time frame of initial divorce filings and the birth of a child. You move to the 1988 time frame. I'm going to HUD. I'm going to Congress. That's when we can get things done. And interlocking, my ex-in-law, Leonard Millman, owned a company called MDC Holdings, which owned Silverado Savings, where Neil Bush was George W. Bush. Brother was the board of directors.
Right.
They were involved in robbing HUD. And I got a conviction. An independent prosecutor was appointed, Arlen Adams, as a result of my work in investigating them. I was
okay, but stop right there, because at this point you became a kind of an investigator, even though you say you were a contractor, right?
Well, yes, I treated it like a business. I said, if I'm going to investigate these people and I'm going to spend 20 to 25 hours a week doing it, I'm going to do it on a basis like an investigator. So I thought like a businessman. How do I go after these people? How do I dig on these people? But because of my real estate building background, I was able to find the land tracts and able to identify corporations and do this. And then after that, it just became almost a career here, should we say, as a result.
Well, clearly, and it's quite extraordinary. So you actually were able to press charges against them?
Well, I actually got Congress to appoint the independent prosecutor, Arlen Adams, who brought an indictment against Philip Wynn, who at the time was, he had been the former FHA commissioner. Then he was ambassador to Switzerland at the time. And we actually got an indictment, and he pled guilty to and agreed to pay $1.5 million fine. He should have been fined and thrown in jail, and 500,000 apartment units they stole from HUD during that period of time should have been returned to HUD. And that what they were building and all the money, it never happened. Matter of fact, Philip Wynn, there was a judge, he never spent a day in jail. A judge sealed his case to keep him from going to jail, and then some 10 years later, Bill Clinton, the day before he leaves office as President of the United States, gave him a presidential pardon.
Yeah, that sounds very typical. So how did you get, now can you just leap to the Denver airport?
Yes.
Part of this, because how did that get wrapped in here?
Well, Leonard Millman owned almost all the land tracts around the airport. Him and Larry Mizell and the company called the MDC Holdings. MDC is Colorado's largest financial institution. It's one of the largest home builders in the nation. They own Richmond American Homes. They own Ponderosa Homes. They own Wood Brothers Homes. They own a ton of entities. They're traded on the New York Stock Exchange.
Okay, is this before they enlarged the Denver airport?
Yes, it was. And now this was all concocted. The airport, they wanted to build this new airport because of the amount of frauds that they could do on the airport. It was supposed to be initially a $500 million airport, and it ended up costing taxpayers all over Colorado and federal taxpayers as well. It ended up nearly $16.5 trillion, where I left, should we say, my investigations on how much money they actually stole off the airport. And that was in all the land tract frauds, the sale of the land that was 5 times its value to the city to build the airport on, It was just bizarre what they did.
Okay, and how did you find out about the underground base part of it?
Well, that came to me later because at the initial time I was working with Dick Young. He was a former admiral, and we were both investigating, and he had come to me through a reporter. And then later, a whistleblower came to me and verified who he was as far as working at the airport, working for one of the construction companies at the airport. And he was one of the ones that built 5 secret underground buildings underneath the airport. He was the superintendent for that company. So I got him to agree to go on, not on camera, but go on camera without his face. And we got TV 59 in Denver to agree to put him on camera, or not his face, but his voice. And they even, changed his voice. They had some kind of a device there that changed it. So we put him on camera about the secret underground airport that they had built, which turned out to be a concentration camp. It was a transfer station for FEMA. So one of these days when they decide to go round everybody up on FEMA, they're going to take a bulldozer, go out there and clear off the airport runway that they had built out there, and clear off the top of that cap, and it's a stairway, and it's an elevator going into jail cells underground.
Okay, very interesting. All right, so at that point, you had revealed that much. Then what happened in your career?
Well, by that time, they found out that it was me, because Time Magazine, Jonathan Beatty, who wrote the book BCCI, The Outlaw Bank, that had spun out of Silverado. It was information that I had provided to him, some of the links to it. He actually paid me, Time Magazine paid me, I think, $1,500 or something, phone call bills and so forth, and investigating stuff during that period of time. I had Margie Sloan with Peter Bruton that wrote the book, The Mafia, CIA, and George Bush. These books that I've contributed to, and some of my names appear on, are on the front of my website at the bottom of the front page, stewwebb.com. But what had ended up happening from that was they found out, Leonard Millman and the gang found out, because of Gail Norton, the dirty attorney general in Colorado that was obstructing justice and covering everything up, the U.S. attorney in Denver that my name was floating all around on, who was one that was under the payroll of Leonard Millman, had taken bribes from him. Gail Norton took bribes, the whole bit, to cover the whole thing up. They found out it was me. I get 2 tires shot out in Kansas City, going down 435 just south of Worlds of Fun. Get 2 tires blown out crossing the Missouri River, which was intended to kill me. Ironically, an IRS agent investigating Silverado had her car tires blown out on the same bridge almost a year later to date. But it ended up going from that to where, when they found out it was me, causing 4 congressional investigations, of which I didn't appear, but other people were appearing, and so forth, they decided to come after me with a warrant, claiming that I made threatening phone calls to my former father-in-law. So I was charged and illegally indicted 45 days after arrest to indictment, supposed to be within 30 days, all this. They held me for 10.5 months. They sent me to Springfield, Missouri to be evaluated, saying I was incapable of, that I was a nut or something. And that, so the government had to evaluate me. The government said there wasn't anything the matter with me. But what was interesting, Kerry, is during that period of time, 5,000 Iran-Contra players all got arrested because Daddy Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, in that 1992 fall time frame, he was leaving office. This was just after the election. I got arrested prior. He began picking people up because he knew he was going to lose the election. So he started picking up all these Iran-Contra players. They were holding them in the mental institutions, the hospitals for the criminally insane, they called it, in the U.S. Bureau of Prisons. You couldn't believe the amount of legal...
Okay. Wait. I don't understand. Why were they holding these Iran-Contra people in prisons?
What had happened is that Bush, they were liability to George Herbert Walker Bush, my ex-in-laws, and so forth, that were all involved in Iran-Contra and all this theft of the U.S. Treasury.
Right. So they didn't want them on the street? Was that
they
that?
Didn't want them on the street, yeah. They were pulling them off the street right and left. And you know the story, like Terry Reid's story that wrote the book Clinton, Bush, and the CIA. many people they were after during that period of time. So they arrested a lot of people. There were tremendous amounts of people that were in Springfield, Missouri. We called it Siberia, USA, because out of the 3,000 prisoners that were there being evaluated, 2,500 of us were whistleblowers and or Iran-Contra players.
Wow.
Half whistleblowers and the other half were
Okay,
Iran.
and what year was this?
This was 1990, early 1993. Around January, they sent me down there until around April, I think it was. And I was in the meantime, I was being held in Denver, Colorado, in the federal detention center there as basically a political prisoner, claiming that the charges were that I made threatening, harassing phone calls to my former father-in-law, which I never did. And so, this was the bogus charge. The government testified there wasn't anything the matter with me. They didn't have a case at all. Judge Richard Mage kicked me out of jail that day that the shrink came up and testified in my behalf. After I'd been returned to Denver, they kicked me out of jail, gave me a $50,000 signature bond. 30 days later, he dismissed the charges against me, saying the speedy trial rights had been violated.
Wow.
Well, what they did, Kerry, is I had done, by that time, while there was a warrant for my arrest, I hid out from the FBI for a year. From 1991 to 1992, and I did nearly 70 radio shows as a guest on huge nationwide shows where there were 300 hookup of various stations across the nation. They were some very large networks like the Viacom owns today that you can't get on because of the press is controlled, radio is controlled, etc. But I was doing a lot of noise. And with the noise I had going on with the Denver Post, every week they were printing a story of mine. The Rocky Mountain News was printing a story. It was just one paper after another was doing something. Time Magazine was hitting them. Everybody was hitting them. So when they found out it was me causing all this noise, here I am. I get locked up and become a political prisoner. Then the charges are just dismissed against me. And of course, I never stopped after I get out of jail. I decided I'm going to go out after him with vengeance in force. And I'm really going to go put these people in jail and bring them to justice. And that just has never happened.
Okay.
Gone to jail,
I hear you. I know that. Okay, so at this moment, so can you catch us up with your career after that? I mean, did you, because when did you start working with Michael Ruppert? Was it after that?
That was in the, I believe, the late 90s. I dealt with Ruppert over the anthrax and dealt with Dr. Lynn Horowitz. Lynn and I are friends. We'd come together in Denver both. We're doing speeches at Global Sciences, which was alternative doctors. They had a big convention there every year. And we were both doing speeches on government corruption and so forth. And we came together and had a sit down about the anthrax. He was asking me about that. He had done some research. And that's how I came about with Michael Ruppert. But I'd heard about Ruppert and talked to him a couple of times. And through Al Martin. Al Martin was the Iran-Contra whistleblower who I helped get his book published in 1999, I believe it was. It's called The Conspirators. It's www.almartinraw.com. Excuse me. He has tremendous amounts of information on my ex-in-laws in that book and their business partners, because my ex-in-laws were business partners with not only Jeb Bush, Neil Bush, George W. Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, Ollie North, General Richard C. Cord, General John Singelab, Bill and Hillary Clinton, and the list goes on and on and on. Okay, so
incredible. Okay, well, this is actually pretty mind blowing in light of. Well, I don't know if you've been following the White Hats at all. Do you know if I say the White Hats? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm familiar with Kerry. Let me put it this way. I've come across a lot of different ones over the years that have tried to come against them. Matter of fact, I came across the IRS, a blown operation of the IRS. They were after him to put him in jail. They actually, agents, I can't mention names and so forth, but agents actually gave me files on these people that they couldn't do anything with. I mean, their investigations came to a halt. Over the years, there have been people within the intelligence community, various agencies, the NSA, the CIA, FBI even, and DEA have been after them. They want them shut down. So we classify all these different ones, good guys I call them, that have really tried to do something that still leak information to me and leak it to others. I've come to know over 300 of these types. We call them all white hats, okay?
All right, yes, and I appreciate that.
I'm also aware that in 2004, and I'll say this, Tom Heneghan and I, who's also a whistleblower, decided that we were going to reach out to everybody. We got Interpol involved. I can't say much more other than what they called they created what they called the American-French Alliance with Interpol. And some have referred to them as some of the ones being the white hats, some of the others, but they were very instrumental, Kerry, in helping me and Tom Heneghan bring these people nearly to justice. And when I say this, in 2008, they were going to bankruptcy court. I had the evidence. I had them nailed on this frauds involving the mortgages, still do, where they were bundling the mortgages up and duplicating the mortgages and even creating mortgages on houses that were never built, and then selling them all over the bond street, into the bond market, using AIG, using Citicorp, the entities that my ex-in-laws owned before their reported death. So we had them going to bankruptcy court.
Okay, but I'm going to want to. I'm sorry. I do want to go into that, actually, the whole mortgage scandal, because I know you have a background in that. But before we do that, I'd like to back up a few years, because you're talking about you kind of glossed. Well, we didn't even cover when 9/11 hit, because you must have been pretty active during that time as well, right?
I was on the radio. KathleenKeating.com still got an archive up there, last time I heard, of one of the programs I did in June of 1991, or excuse me, June of 2001, telling the American people we would be attacked by the end of August, and this information was being given to me by shadow government players saying that Bush was going to attack America and do a black ops operation on America, and that's exactly what happened. It was the Israeli Mossad and Daddy Bush, and they pulled it off. Nobody's been prosecuted.
Okay, I figured you'd have some background there. So, okay, so now
bombing, I looked at it because of various people that were involved. I mean, you had Terry Lynn Nichols, you had Timothy McVeigh, who was all tied up. They were all spooks. They were all part of what they called the CMAG group, part of Iran-Contra. There were many players involved. One interesting one was the Robert Anderson that had the gun shop that they reportedly robbed. What's interesting is this guy's an Iran-Contra player, and he's got a yacht at Pier 66 where Jeb Bush and Ollie North still deliver drugs into the United States of America. And he's got a yacht parked down there every week full of drugs. So,
okay, very
good. They did
good.
that to get to get Bush and Clinton did that. Daddy Bush, who still controls this country, still the head mob don. They did that to get what they called the anti-terrorist legislation in. And one key element of that, and I'll state this for the record, in the Oklahoma City bombing, that black ops against America was all for one purpose. It's the key. Ask any customs agent in this country. The CIA can fly into the United States of America, and none of their transport they bring in can be checked, because there's they call it no search overflight. In other words, they landed a military base, they got a load, a cargo of drugs, they can't be searched by customs. It doesn't have to go through customs. All as a result of that anti-terrorist legislation that went in 1996.
I see. Okay, very interesting. Okay, but I'm sure you're also very well versed on the whole that Clinton. I heard that Clinton was running the drugs. That he was in charge of it.
Well, if you take and look at my Bush crime family flow chart, it's on the front page of my.
Yes, and actually, I do want to tell people. In fact, if I can bring it up here on the screen, I will. I'm not sure if I can get it on the screen, but it is a highly recommended. Why don't you explain to people how to get to the flow chart, because that is a real piece of work that
They can either go right there on the front page and scroll down where you see a picture of Larry Mizell, and underneath it, I believe, is where the flow chart is. It shows the three legs of what we call Iran-Contra, which was the Arkansas connection, the Ohio connection, and the Denver connection. And here's why the three connections, okay? Denver was the money laundering. Ohio was the money laundering. Ohio was Carl Linder. Denver was Leonard Millman, the two Knights Templar Illuminati bankers. In the United States, you have Henry Kissinger, Daddy Bush, David and Lawrence Rockefeller. Lawrence is now dead. William R. Grace's son, Bill Grace, is one of them. Now Larry Mizell is one of them, took over for Leonard Millman. These Illuminati bankers, two of them, which was Leonard Millman and Carl Linder. And Carl Linder's attorney, ironically, was Charles Keating, if you see the overlay. The Arkansas connection was because of MENA and the amount of drugs that were being brought in there and the overflights going in and out of guns, drugs, computers, etc. That was part of it. The other part was where Millman would move the money into Silverado and out of Denver and go through J.P. Morgan, the Isle of Jersey, hit the Bahamas, Isle of Jersey, and then it hit Hong Kong. It split two ways when it hit Hong Kong. One, it'd come back in, the money would come back in through the form of foreign trust that Hillary Clinton and the Rose Law Firm was setting up. So this drug money that they had just moved out of the country and legitimized from Iran-Contra, which is still active today. They're still hauling the drugs. That money was legitimized by creating these foreign trusts, and these foreign trusts did not have to pay income tax. That's what the purpose was. And that's what Clinton's role was as far as the Rose Law Firm. Of course, Bill Clinton, Banana Republic.
Okay, wait. Just can we go back to Hong Kong? So how did Hong Kong factor in?
Well, they were using banks in Hong Kong, and then the money split two ways when they laundered it back into the United States. And they would launder it after Hillary's creating these trusts through the Rose Law Firm. Those trusts were passed then to one of the 6 CIA counsel that had the attorneys that had been CIA counsel to George Herbert Walker Bush when he was CIA director. One of them was Norman Brownstein in Denver, Colorado, that was on the board of directors of MDC Holdings. He was on the board of AIG, Citicorp, Millman's MDC Holdings. The list goes on. And he was creating these, he was taking and setting up the trust, and then they'd move the money into the trust.
Okay.
As an example, one of the trusts that they had set up at Brownstein shows up as the trustee of the trust to hide Millman and to hide Mizell and to hide Hillary Clinton and everybody else. One of the trusts was the Onyx Trust, O-N-Y-X. The Onyx Trust is very significant because it was built for nothing but drug money. The Onyx Trust has Onyx Acceptance Company of Phoenix, Arizona, that loans over 50% of all used vehicles in America borrow from Onyx Acceptance Company. Does that tell you anything? Means if you go buy a used vehicle in America, 50% of the time it's being financed with Iran-Contra drug money.
Okay, but wow. So to get back to I don't know.
There was another split in Hong Kong, which we might as well mention because it's going to tie into 911.
Right.
And that was split into 3 banks in Switzerland. One was Swiss Bank Corp, one was Volksbank, and the other one, I forgot how to pronounce it, was German-sounding bank. It was an old Nazi tied to Adolf Hitler in World War II that Daddy Bush was using to launder the money. But Volksbank and Swiss Bank Corp ended up, those were set up as discretionary accounts, they call them. Numbered accounts, but they were discretionary. And there was Wedbush, it was Isley Brokerage in Las Vegas and Reno, Nevada. Isley was involved in the Bohemian Grove Club game where, you know, they would do the hunting trips on kids and do the psychotic, you know, raping children and killing children, crazy stuff up in Gresham, Oregon. There was a talk show host, Alex Jones, that never got it right. He had picked off the Bohemian Grove Club in California, but that isn't where the Templar bankers do it. They do it in Gresham, Oregon. Isley was, ironically, had set up through discretionary accounts. He was buying up Wall Street which now they have a tremendous stranglehold over the economy by buying up everything. They were doing this with that drug money, and he was doing it through his discretionary accounts. He also set up and financed what they call the Waymark Foundation. Waymark Foundation financed 911. The paymaster out of the Waymark Foundation, Gwendolyn Waymark, was also directly tied to Jack Abramoff, the lobbyist that got put in jail. He got, should we say, put in jail because of me and Tom Heneghan and the information that we provided to Carol Lamb, the fired U.S. attorney out of San Diego. But Jack Abramoff, and Hank Greenberg of the Greenberg Tarrig law firm were the paymasters of 911.
Okay, how much did you get into the whole Bohemian Grove? What was the other place in Oregon that you called?
It was in Gresham, Oregon, on what they call the Isley Nursery. I think it's spelled I-S-L-E-Y, as I recall, Isley Nursery. And it was Isley was known as Tango Dancer in what they called 911. A lot of investigators kept coming up this thing, but he was playing as paymaster in the deal. But the Isley farm up there, this huge nursery, was used on many occasions. I know federal agents that were there protecting Daddy Bush, Secret Service agents were protecting Daddy Bush while he was running around in his underwear chasing kids down on the farm, and the Secret Service agents were told to stay back. Oh, we're protected. We got our own guns. You don't have to worry about us. And 20 of these psychopaths, including Leonard Millman, my former father-in-law, Henry Kissinger, David Rockefeller, and the others, were participating in this hunting down kids, molesting, raping kids. In some cases, they actually kill kids.
Okay, and where did you get your information for this?
From federal agents.
Okay.
I've got, Kerry, I know some of the top what they call truly trained 007s in this country. There has only been 300 of them trained this way. They have put millions of dollars in these people. Most of them have PhD degrees, war college degrees, etc. I know a half a dozen of them. I also know over 300 shadow government players as a result of being put in Springfield, Missouri, who I have been able to obtain information over the years. They have revealed to me. I made contact with so many of them when I got out of prison as a political prisoner in 1993. And so they have provided to me over the years. And, of course, I've come across just straight-up guys that from time to time try to put something into someone's hands. I'm always starting a fire. It's just like right now, I found out, that before the bank announcement, they made this little announcement. They're creating this financial strike force. And it was going to be the New York attorney, the assistant U.S. attorney out in New York, SEC attorneys. I've reached out to them. I gave them the bundlers. I gave them what they needed to go after the people that created this financial collapse of the economy, which is, economic plunder is the death penalty under U.S. laws. And it keeps coming back to Leonard Millman and Larry Mizell creating these mortgages. So I'm always reaching out. I'm always trying to pump some attorney general someplace or U.S. attorney or trying to provide the information someplace where I can get something done.
Okay, I appreciate that, and that's amazing. You seem like you're just like this most amazing man, I have to say.
George Bush says my library card expired. You gain too much knowledge about his crimes, and that's when they say your library card expires and they try to kill you.
I see. Okay, did you know, I have to ask you, did you happen to know Ted Gunderson?
He's a piece of garbage. He was an infiltrator. He was part of COINTELPRO. The guy actually came after me at one time and tried to extort me because he was trying to get documents from me. He was playing buddy-buddy like he does with everybody, or did before his reported death this year. But he turned out to be on the other side of the equation, working for Daddy Bush, collecting names in the patriot community and those that, he would step up to try to build his credibility. He never provided anything to anybody. He was just always there with a camera, running around trying to get video of whistleblowers and so forth.
Okay.
own credibility so he could infiltrate the patriot community. And it was just bizarre what that guy was. I mean, if he was still living, and if I had an attorney that would ever represent me, 2 have been killed. 1 was poisoned, had to have a triple bypass. I've had him threatened off. Nobody wants to touch my case. I have a 28-year-old daughter and a grandson that I can't even have a relationship with because they got a permanent lifetime restraining order on me under a CO case. Okay? But if I could ever have an attorney represent me and had an attorney represent me, I would have put Ted Gunderson in jail as one of the co-conspirators racketeering against me. That's what Ted Gunderson.
Okay, well, that's interesting. He did apparently do some good things in regard to what is known as the last circle. This information, I don't know if you're familiar with that whole can of worms, but it involves Michael Riconosciuto, Danny Casolaro, and so on.
Danny Casolaro was killed as a result of basically the Ted Gunderson crowd. Ted Gunderson was working for General John Singlaub at the Indian Reservation because I knew Danny Casolaro and talked to Casolaro in 1991.
All right.
2 days before Casolaro got killed, my tires were blown out on the freeway in Kansas City, which I mentioned earlier. I'd been on phone calls with Casolaro. He was digging on what he called the octopus.
That's right.
Casolaro, when he was killed, was down the street at a hotel room from my good friend Bill McCoy, who was a Pentagon former Inspector General, who was one of the biggest Iran-Contra, should we say, behind-the-scenes whistleblowers investigators, him and Stephen Dinnerstein. Bill McCoy was written about in the Oklahoma City book, where my name appeared also, by Dave Hoffman, Power Politics. Bill McCoy was also a very dear good friend of not only mine, but Terry Reid's. Terry Reid was one of the CI pilots in Mena, Arkansas. Terry, of course, wrote his book. He's still a friend. I've talked to him even here recently. But the point is he wrote the book Clinton, Bush, and the CIA. Bill McCoy, you had asked me the question and I lost thought. I was trying to
okay, well, you went down the Danny Casolaro. Did he talk to him right before he died?
The night before he died, he was killed in that motel, and I can't reveal to you, but it was tied to the party's name. I don't even recall right offhand. I've got it in my files, but it was tied all to the Capason Indian Reservation boys out there, tied in with Michael Riconosciuto, tied in. And I met Michael in prison in a transfer station in Oklahoma and had a 2-hour direct conversation with him, so I know things about Michael and things that he revealed to me at that time. But they were all tied in the Capason Indian Reservation, which was done for drugs and weapons.
But you knew about the bioweapons facility down there.
Yes, it was a 5-story underground bio facility. They're out of California, yes.
Okay.
And they were shipping Stinger missiles. I've got the document showing Ted Gunderson sold the Stinger missiles to Bin Laden.
Yes. Okay. Yes, I remember that he had dealings with Bin Laden when he was CIA.
Yeah. Well, no. Yep. When he left the FBI, Ted Gunderson was kicked out of the FBI for holding satanic ceremonies in his FBI office, and after 2 times doing it, his underlayments underneath him called him up on review. So they gave him a psychological evaluation and found out that Ted Gunderson was declared a paranoid schizophrenia. And at that point, they put him to early retirement. His wife, I talked to, former wife, Jocelyn, of which he bore 4 kids by him, had divorced him in 1991, or 1971, 72, I think, the divorce was final. Jocelyn had indicated that he had been diagnosed at that time as a paranoid schizophrenia.
Okay, well, that might be a healthy state of mind in the current, under the current situation we're living in. But I appreciate, the information that you've got in the background about him and about what went on. That's absolutely fascinating, and that will actually link up with some investigation that Anthony Sanchez is doing on the reservations right now.
And look, if you have him, go on and look underneath my breaking news page. On my front page, you scroll down just a little ways, you'll see breaking news. Click on it, scroll down in that breaking news, and just before the actual news, you have to scroll down a few inches. I've got some links in there to kind of, to highlight certain things of what's going on the current bank bailout and other things. But when you get down, according to date, just above that, you'll see Bush. I called it Bush Nazi Goon News. Click on it and look at the Ted Gunderson link. There's so much information up there on Ted Gunderson. It's off the charts.
Okay, well, I'm a little more interested in Michael Rikonoshuto and the bioweapons labs and on the Indian reservations, because that is that's a future problem that we're going to have here. But thank you for that. That's fascinating. It's amazing the amount of knowledge that you keep in your head just at the moment. So, okay, I'd like to fast forward because you obviously have kept in touch with what's going on with the mortgage scandal during 2008 and all of that. And then you also must have been involved in, or be very knowledgeable about what has gone on lately with the Banksters and with with basically taking down America, etc. So I'd like to kind of go down that road if you could.
Well, basically, what had happened is that I had discovered in 2001, right after the 9/11 time frame. It was around 2002. I'd begin to notice because I watched the stock on MDC Holdings, the MDC. NYSE, New York Stock Exchange. You punch it in Google and you see the trading for the day. All of a sudden, I'm watching their stock going from $20 a share, it's shooting up to around $40 a share, and then $60. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell's going on here? And I'm looking over the SEC stuff because this is the company, one of the biggest fraudulent companies, and it's got on its board of directors all the canopy of everybody, including Clinton's attorney and my former father-in-law's goons, okay? All these different ones who were Robin Hood and different stuff. So I'm always monitoring this and monitoring other corporations, and I'm seeing their stock shoot up. I'm looking at it, and all of a sudden I'm seeing all these extra houses that they're selling in Southern California. And they have Richmond American Homes underneath their umbrella. MDC does. It's a subsidiary company. And Richmond American is one of the top 10 builders in the United States. They build tens of thousands of houses a year. All of a sudden, they're just shooting through the roof in sales and reported housing and so forth. So I started looking at this and saying, something's wrong here because these other builders aren't shooting up like this. And their stock's soaring and they're reporting all these numbers. And I started asking some different spooks, I call them, CIA, NSA, the various alphabetical agency people that I had come to know, okay?
Okay.
And one of them got a tip on this, that they were reporting houses that they weren't building, that they were making it look like they were building it, and he thought they were doing it to proffer up their stock to commit securities fraud, and then tank their stock later because they played yo-yo with MDC stock. It's gone from one time $24 a share to 5 cents a share overnight, and insider trading, and they take everybody's money and suck it into their pockets and into the corporation, and everybody loses billions of dollars. So I'm looking at all this saying something's wrong here, and, MDC headquarters. It turned out to be they were clocking houses or making it look like they were building these houses in Southern California and Arizona and other places that they weren't building. They were bundling up mortgages, and they had a company, one main entity, I'd rather not say on the air tonight, but they had one main entity in Denver that they were bundling up these mortgages and selling them to, the bond market and Wall Street, pension funds, banks, and so forth. And they'd bundle up $500 million at a time, or $200 million, and sometimes $2 or $2.5 billion worth of mortgages. They were buying up around the country from mortgage brokers, and also from Home America Mortgage, of which that is a wholly owned subsidiary of MDC, et cetera. And so I'm seeing all these numbers and saying, let me check this out. So I have people in Southern California, they're going out there and look at this after I got a tip that they weren't building these houses. They were creating houses, mortgages on houses that they were claiming they were building, but were never built. Well, here's somebody out there looking at bare land tracts, and there's no houses on them. So at that point, I started looking deeper and started examining everything and dig as usual. And spending better than half of my time. At one time, Kerry, I was spending 80 hours a week when people were contributing to me back in the 90s heavily to keep my activity alive. And I was just putting in the 80, sometimes even 100 hours a week in investigations and just really digging hard. But in this time frame of this 2001, 2002, and on up, I saw all these numbers. And, of course, I'm getting tips that they're buying up mortgages, that they're duplicating mortgages. They're buying mortgages from people, and they're duplicating them and sell them in bundle A, we'll call it. Then, 2 months later, they got another bundle of mortgages, and they're selling it to AIG, $500 million worth of mortgages, and 30% of them that are bundled up are duplicated. And they were actually paying, if you can believe this. AIG was part of the scam. Citicorp was part of the scam. And when they would bundle them up and sell them to the banks, they were actually paying the mortgages, keeping a separate set of books on the artificial mortgage that they had created to keep from triggering this shit. Because, say if they made a half a million dollar mortgage on their house that never existed, and they only paid out $25,000 to $50,000 in payments on the loan to keep it alive until they passed it through one or two of the banks, then they didn't get caught, was the game. So they were actually paying mortgage on some of these things that didn't exist.
Right, and you must have, but you also must have been following the Goldman Sachs shorting, where they did the shorting.
I followed all of the entities. Primarily, it wasn't so much Goldman Sachs, but it was all of the AIG, intertwined MDC / Citicorp, National Brokerage, which was Millman's company, National Acceptance Company, which is they are the First National Acceptance, which owns First National banks across the United States, and et cetera, et cetera. So I was watching all that primarily because that's where Fraud City was. Their main fraud city is 50 South Steel, where Janus Funds exists, which is another entity that they own. I mean, that place has, 5 floors of nothing but, we call it Security Fraud USA. And, just everything in the way of massive fraud goes through that place. But so I had my eye and scope on other people, primarily did on Goldman Sachs and so forth. But, they were passing tremendous amounts, but it was primarily AIG that was doing the dirty stuff for them.
Okay, I appreciate that, maybe on the ground, but at a certain point there was also, I guess when later, I'm talking later, when it got till, I don't know if it was 2008, 2009, where the mortgages were actually coming due. This is not the fake mortgages. This is actually...
No, they were actually coming due. A lot of that stuff began to happen in around 2006. And a lot of the foreign banks, Deutsche Bank, French banks, England, Greece, etc., are going, hey, we bought a bundle of these mortgages over here, and 30% of them are trash. Okay? That started happening. So then what they started doing, because they had so many of these mortgages, and a lot of them they were having to buy back and actually float them back into Citicorp, AIG, and different places. They began to derivatize them. And that's where the derivative game came in, where they can, Bush allowed them to, if they had on their books, say, $100 million, they could go up to 100 times that in derivatizing and selling paper, derivatives, what they call derivatives. When Obama came in, and after the bank bailout and so forth, Obama allowed them to go up to 400 times on the derivatives of what these supposedly assets on the bank books were. And that's how they screwed the economy and screwed the people worldwide, is through this paper that has nothing to back it. There's no mortgages to back it. It's just like Greece. Greece, I think it was 4 weeks ago, I sat and watched on MSNBC in the morning myself, talking about how Greece was saying 40% of their debt was artificial mortgages in derivative papers, that there's nothing to back it, and that Greece wanted to become sovereign, but, Daddy Bush has this stranglehold over politicians in Greece and their government and so forth, so, they don't want that thing to be bankrupted on. Like France and France did it, Germany did it, and of course Italy did it, where they became sovereign. They call it sovereign, and they took that debt, basically bankrupted on that debt, and said, hey, Goldman Sachs, this is your problem. You passed it to us. You sold it to us. And so they threw the debt basically back into their face. And they declared themselves to be sovereign, and they set up a new set of books, which was their sovereign books and their true assets of the bank. And that took them all in the past 120 days.
Okay. Wow. Well, right. There's a lot of different places we can go at this point. Is there? Let me see what time is it. Okay.
10:15. My time.
Right. Just so everyone knows, what I would like to say to people just at this moment, though, is that they can contribute. If you want to contribute to Stew's work, he does have a donate button on his website. So I encourage you to go over there, either during the show or after the show, and please do contribute to his work. And I ask you to also contribute to Project Camelot, to allow me to continue this work. We allow this to be what it is a donation requested, not required, and that's basically letting people in that can't afford it. But at the same time, if you can contribute, then that would be valuable for us. So I am going to take questions from the audience very shortly here, but I want to make sure that we cover sort of the hottest areas that, and I think we're getting a great overview of your work here, and I really appreciate it. The amount of detail you're able to supply is phenomenal. Wow. So let me ask you this: where do you think we're at now in terms of this? Do you think that we're going to have they talk a lot about a 3-day a 3-day weekend, a bank holiday, this kind of thing. Do you think we're going down that road? What do you think's happening with that?
Well, if you go to my website, Tom Heneghan and I work pretty tight since they tried to murder me a year ago in a rollover accident, rolled me on a concrete barrier 3 times, and so I got a nice scar up here and fractured skull and 5 broken vertebrae in my neck, and still going to chiropractor and so forth. We've kind of had to cut conversations, a lot of spooks and stuff, because it's drawn tremendous heat as a result of me. I mean, I just carry a friggin' lot of heat. And, I got a Smolian hit team in here with human passports I go out on the road and I got 5 of them trying to crash into me if I go even to the doctor. So I'm kind of laying low right now. But Tom Heneghan put out this past week, if you go to my website under breaking news, scroll down, and I forgot exactly what the link says here. Let me tell you, it's one of the latest posts about bank holiday is what it was, how they commit fraud Ponzi scheme on bank holiday. And what this is, Kerry, is it's phenomenal what Geithner, Obama, and the head of the Federal Reserve just did on President's Day. They just moved created $16 trillion, part of the taxpayers' money. Taxpayers are responsible for it. They just gave ECB, which is European Central Bank, which is like the Federal Reserve here, it's ECB, and same people, the 100 crime families worldwide, the Illuminati bankers control ECB like they control the Federal Reserve here. They control 90% of the wealth of the world, I might add, etc. On President's Day, why our government is shut down where nobody would see this, they moved this money, and Tom, I give him credit, and I give Interpol agents that I'm aware of that did this, was able to find it. They moved and created $16 trillion, including counterfeit money, it's in the post, and moved it into the ECB to keep from having an economic collapse in Europe. So they would have $16 trillion in order to proffer up all the banks in Europe. Tom reported on this on Saturday night. This was this past Saturday night. on yesterday, Monday,
Okay.
the 27th, one of the parliament members in Britain stood up in parliament and talked about this $16 trillion that just went through the LIFT fund, LIFF fund, etc., in England. And the Bank of England is broke, and etc.
Right.
And
Well, wait, hold on one second here, because this is actually the white hat. When I mentioned the white hats, I was actually talking about a group that is publishing communiques to the people. They have a website called tdarkcabalblogspot.com, something like that. It's a strange URL. But basically, I post their communiques, links to them on my blog from time to time. And they're the ones who actually told Lord Blackheath, they gave him the information. They've been prepping him for 2 years, and he finally announced this in the House of Lords. So that's what you're talking about.
Yes, and matter of fact, he began to talk about some of this financial corruption and the Ponzi. We call it the big Ponzi scheme, okay? Because that's all it is. It's a derivative Ponzi game. It's creating paper and out of nowhere, money out of nowhere with nothing to back it.
Right.
But he began this parliament member, Lord, whatever his name is.
James Blackheath.
James Blackheath had started talking about this about a month ago. As I recall, I think it was in that timeline. But the most significant statement he made was yesterday upon the parliament floor when he talked about the same thing Heneghan had reported on. And I give Tom and I give the Interpol that was connected up into this, that they had talked about the $16 trillion. They're watching them like a hawk. Daddy Bush doesn't go anyplace without, should we say, a camera and a mic on his head that he's probably aware of, okay? Because he's the mob don, he's the head kingpin, he's the one that controls the Clintons and the Bush family, of course, and Obama.
Okay, right, and Geithner, as a matter of fact.
Geithner and all of them. In the Congress and the Senate, he's got in his pocket. Okay, that's the problem that we have. We got a crime syndicate running in America, and it needs to be broken up.
Okay,
and it needs to be removed and jailed.
But are you aware that Geithner was detained in Switzerland?
At one time, months ago, there was one deal, and then another thing about George W. Bush was going to go over there, and they had an arrest warrant for him. There's red notices on these guys in different places, just like Geithner. We had reported back, I think, 2 weeks ago, or 2.5, 3 weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, about Russian Putin, the president of Russia, or the prime minister running again for president, or whatever. He had issued an arrest warrant for Geithner, or not Geithner, but Soros, involving some of the activity of George Soros.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. What's the relationship between Soros, Rothschild, and Bush?
The key is Soros is like let me define it for you, because a lot of people do not know the structure of what they call the Illuminati. I'm quite aware of this because remember, my ex-father-in-law Leonard Millman was one of the Knights Templar bankers. One sick bastard. I mean, they're sick. These are 100 men that control 90% of the wealth of the world. The United States was the last to fall. In 1981, the General Accounting Office said that 1% of the population was in control of 20% of America's economy. Today, they're in control of between 90 and 95%. GAO was reporting by mid-90s they were up to 40, 45, 50%. Henry Gonzalez, I was working with, which is House Bank Chairman, was running these reports, having GAO pop them up way back in the 90s. But the point is, these 100 men control. It's like the pyramid on the back of the Federal Reserve. They control the Federal Reserve.
Right, like, I know this, but what I really want to know the individual players. In other words, I want to know what Soros
is a layer below the 100 bankers. The 100 bankers, they're broken down into three types of bankers. One's the American Illuminati bankers, Templar bankers. Another is the European, and the other is the Asian. And these 100 of them choose and sit on what they call the Council of 13, where they go sit down with the devil and it's psychotic stuff. It's good versus evil. Here's what we're discussing. But these 100 are all devil worshippers. They're all Satanists. And they're bent on one thing, and that's world domination and world control over the money supply. And that's what, you know, if you look on the back of the dollar bill, the all-seeing eye, that's Lucifer. The first level is the 100 bankers. The next level are the George Soroses. They allow them to make as much, the Carl Icahns, the Philip Winns, the various ones of they call them now, we call them the cabal of billionaires. They weren't billionaires in the 1980s. They couldn't have the cabal of trillionaires out there as fronts. Daddy Bush worth 79 trillion, et cetera. Millman worth 16 trillion when he dies, supposedly 2004 and all that. They call them the cabal of billionaires. This is the layer underneath them.
I see. Okay. Okay. What about the Rothschilds?
Rothschild family are one of the 100 Templar Illuminati Templar bankers, they call them.
Okay. So what's the relationship between Bush and Rothschild?
Daddy Bush is one of the 100 Illuminati Templar bankers.
Right.
And they're all interconnected. Where they really overlay is all these major corporations. One of them is AIG, ironically. Citicorp is another one where you'll find the overlay. Even in the MDC holdings, you'll find tremendous overlays. If you look at the stock ownership of these publicly held corporations, they keep coming back to the financial institutions and the insurance companies and the entities that own into these various entities are the ones that Rothschild's controlling, that Rockefellers are controlling, that Leonard Millman, now Larry Mizell of Denver is controlling, that George Herbert Walker Bush controls. Trilateral Investments, Inc. is one of them. Al Martin, I suggest, Kerry, Al did an excellent book. AlMartinRaw.com. It's called The Conspirators. Go buy his book. Read the connections.
Okay. Okay. Well, what about the club of what is it called? The Club of 300.
Yeah, that's like a layer underneath the Illuminati bankers.
Okay. All right. So at this point, what I want to do is basically go to the audience and let them ask you some questions. So what that requires me to do is take a look at the chat. Next on live stream, I have two computers running here, and on one I'm able to read the questions as they go by, and sometimes they go by pretty quickly. There are some people who do contact me in other means, other ways. Now, I am curious, do you have any contacts that are giving you intelligence about our military? Because my understanding is that there are factions in the military that are very unhappy with what's been going down in America, and they're not about to take orders of go to war in Iran just because Daddy Bush wants to distract them from other things.
Kerry, there's a up on my front of my website, stewwebb.com. If you scroll down, and you'll see a letter to Congressman Ron Paul. You'll see a letter to Jan Sikowski, who was on the committee that was investigating Blackwater. I'm going to tell you something so far off the charts, and then you'll understand. I think will have answered your question regarding what I know about the military. Yes, tremendous amounts of the military behind us. But here's what had occurred. I can't build houses anymore. I can't get loans to go build houses because they control the banks. And when I married that woman, my banking loan cut off. Okay?
Okay.
So instead, I do a lot of remodel work up until this past year of this injury and 3 car accidents. They hit me 3 different times. Burned a customer's house to the ground back in October. How far it got was, I've done filings against them, a grand jury demand. I'm the only guy, attorneys have told me, I'm the only one that they know of that has a grand jury demand with an actual case number, 95Y107, filed in Denver, Colorado in 1995, about a lot of this stuff. Refiled again in 2003 and 4 and so forth. It's on the front of my site. It's also in the top of the breaking news portion of that page. In February, late January 2010. I happened to have taken a contract from a guy out of Dallas, Texas that owned a couple of houses up in Nebraska in a little town he had bought for his daughter to remodel that he got scammed on by his own daughter. It was a NSA source hooked me up with it. Said, Stu, you want to go up to Nebraska and do a house? I said, sure, you can live in it while you're doing it. You know, I thought 2-3 months I'll be up there, do the house. I go up there. This little town of Hastings, Nebraska, 100 miles west of Lincoln, never had helicopters flying over it, like suddenly started flying over me after I filed for a grand jury transfer to Kansas City, Kansas, because I had a legal address in Johnson County, which is the 10th judicial, federal judicial. I'd asked for that transfer. These people put a Blackwater helicopter over me, Kerry. They were shooting me with a laser. It went on for 3 days in a row. Third day, they were knocking me to my knees. I was seeing stars. I grabbed the phone. I made a couple phone calls. This is what, should we say, put the final nails in my coffin that they're trying to do. There was a French Mirage fighter jet, which flies the French and the U.S. have an alliance like this. They're our sister. They helped us form our Constitution. General Lafayette, George Washington made an agreement. They would come to our rescue if we were ever attacked or occupied within domestic enemies or outside. We would do the same. They put agents on the ground immediately in our country. We did the same with them. We've had that relationship ever since. They keep Europe free to a major degree. We keep, of course, our continent free. This was the Lafayette-Washington Agreement. So French fly over America, just like we fly our fighter jets over their country. We have bases there, they have bases here. There happened to have been, that day they were poking me with that helicopter, a Blackwater helicopter with 4 Israelis aboard, is what I heard later. That French Mirage just refueled out of Omaha after I made a phone call to certain people within the military, friends of mine, that are part of this group that you're talking about. They shot the Blackwater helicopter down, caused an international incident, a fireball over the skies outside east of Hastings, Nebraska, over the secret underground facility they have out there at the Federal Center, part of NORAD. They shot it down.
Okay.
I looked the next day from an NSA source, 4 Israelis were aboard. I found out who gave the orders on this. The Blackwater gang was George Herbert Walker Bush and his punk Larry Mizell that took over from my ex-in-law. This is how bizarre it got. 2 days after that, I get a phone call from a source inside the NSA that asked me, Stu, what do you know about Larry Mizell? Just had a heart attack and is in General Hospital in Denver, Colorado. I said, I don't know anything about it. I didn't know. Apparently, someone took their satellite and poked the bastard, pardon the expression, for poking on me with that helicopter. They called up the French government, and I have the pilot who's willing to testify and the ambassador to France, if necessary, that this is all true, that it did happen. Even the military knows it. Department of Homeland Security knows it. So now they want me dead because it cost them $3.5 million for their helicopter and 4 dead Israelis. So your question was, have we got part of the military on our side, and are they very patriotic? Yes, they are very patriotic, and they mean friggin' business. They want these people put behind bars. Will they rise up against them? If the American people were to rise, the key is the American people. And quite frankly, Kerry, I thought the day had come. When the Occupy hit Wall Street, I said, oh my God, this is what everybody's praying for. You know, the rising up of the American people. It's the kids and the student loans primarily. And then, of course, the patriots, like I call them patriots, like yourself, myself,
I got into the game with them, the whole bit. A lot of people. It's kind of fallen by the wayside. Maybe there will be another movement. But the whole key is the rising up of the American people. I've been told, I know U.S. generals, I know generals that go inside the White House. The whole key will be the American people. Whether the American people stand up to them or not, the military will stand behind the American people, in my opinion. I hope I've answered your question on that.
Okay, very well, I must say. Thank you for that, Stu. Excellent. So at this moment now, I do have some questions from the audience, so let me start with them. What do you know about Romney? I've got information. He's heavily on the take. Do you happen to have any information on Romney?
Romney is a piece of garbage, and if you go back to this punk and Bain Capital, look how they made the money, and they're breaking out companies the way Icon and Millman and Mizell were doing, and the whole bit. I mean, it's a fraudulent game that they were doing. Instead of building capital and jobs, they were breaking up companies and stealing their assets, basically taking their assets, and that's basically Romney. Romney's a New World Order puppet boy. This guy is a wannabe, should we say? I call it the wannabe Antichrist, the next one that wants an office. I mean, they want to be the chosen one or whatever, because they think they're in this timeline of the New World Order and the one world government and all this. And Romney is bent, mentally bent. He's disturbed, in my opinion. The guy ought to be put behind bars for what he did with Bain Capital and so forth. But
okay.
Mitt Romney, if you look back at the last presidential election last time he was running, what did he say? He said, if I win the election, I'll make Jeb Bush my vice president. We don't need another Bush in the White House. We don't need him in any place. We need him put behind bars. And these trillions of dollars they have stolen from investors and from the United States Treasury, we need this put back in the U.S. Treasury. Kerry, I could prove in a grand jury setting over a 30-day period of time, I could prove $20 trillion robbed from the American people and from the United States government. They won't let me in there because if I could prove it, these people would be behind bars, the confiscation of the assets would happen, the national debt would be wiped, and the states would have enough money to operate their budgets without any deficits.
Absolutely. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
World order. They want to take over the last 10% of the economy of the United States, the last 10% of the mom-pop operations out here, and the individual businessmen and women. They want to take that over. They want everybody marked up with you can go into the biblical side, the biblical prophecies. I'm a very strong believer in Christ. I only live and breathe today with all the damage that I've done, which has been, I'm like a flea or an ant out here, a fly or a bee, stinging them every so often, biting them every so often. I'm a nuisance to them. That's all I am. Because I can't get anybody inside the government anymore to do anything. Nobody in the Congress and Senate have the guts to do it. And nobody in the Congress and Senate wants to touch it. Because any time that they come against them, they're nearly killed over it.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay. I need to ask you about Obama's citizenship.
I don't believe he's a United States citizen, and I believe that document where he applied for his loan at Oxley College, asking, as coming in on a visa, saying that he was a Kenyan student and so forth, and was born in Kenya. And I've had people inside the military that are really ticked off because they know that this guy is illegal. He doesn't have a legal certificate. No, he was born in Kenya. His mother wanted to come to the United States, back to Hawaii, and birth him there. But they wouldn't let her on an airplane because she was too far pregnant. She was ready to deliver, actually, when she wanted to get on the airplane, is what I heard about this. So instead, she stayed there for the period of time with his father.
Well, I was sent by a whistleblower some information about Obama that his father is the real reason that he's in office, and actually, a lot of people think that his mother was white. It actually is the opposite. That's not his real mother, apparently, and his father is a white man, and he's very high up in the government.
Well, I know that Obama worked secretly for the CIA after he got out of college, okay?
Right.
And we know that he was working for a group that was answering to, we call him Daddy Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, at the time that he was his last year as president of the United States in 1992. So Obama goes back. He definitely is a New World Order pig, in my opinion. And he takes his marching orders from them. I mean, I'm aware that Interpol has identified some of the bribes and payoffs that he's taken on a lot of his financial shenanigans, should we say, that they have done. And especially with the bailout, the cover-up, and the TARP cover-up, and the recent cover-up. I mean, just like the banks pay a $25 billion fine, where did that money come from? That came from that bailout money. That didn't even come out of their own bank accounts. That came from the U.S. taxpayers paying a fine to cover it up and obstruct further. So Obama has committed treason and sedition, in my opinion, and I think he could be charged for it very easily in the obstruction of justice and cover-up of economic plunder. Economic plunder in the United States under U.S. laws, and I'm not an attorney, but it reads it's the death penalty, Kerry. Just like treason and sedition. If you go to my website on the front page and look under Larry Mizell, or on the breaking news page up at the very top, you'll see treason and sedition, selling fighter jets, M1 tanks and so forth out of St. Louis, Missouri back in the 1980s, selling biological chemical agents to Iraq, which was known as the Iraq-Gate scandal. Then it became the B&L Bank scandal. And then when it resurrected as a scandal again, it became the Gulf War Syndrome scandal, where the vets that served in Gulf War I were contaminated from the Scud missiles. Leonard Millman and George Bush made that with Barbuti, who was a terrorist, lives in Aqaba, Jordan now, is a coffee merchant. They made it in Boca Raton, Florida. Part of it was made out in Fruita, Colorado at the Sam Gary refinery. They're still selling biological chemical agents worldwide, right out of a U.S. Air Force base in Aurora, Colorado, in a secret underground facility outside the base on private land, where they're shipping it out of the Sam Gary refinery and still selling it to countries worldwide that are willing to buy it. I mean, it's just a constant amount of treason and sedition. Al Martin had reported with Stephen Dinnerstein, a very famous Iran-Contra investigator like Bill McCoy was. And I know Steve, if he's even still alive, I haven't talked to him in a couple of years, they hit him with a biological chemical agent only 7 people have ever been defined with in the entire world having that. And he laid in a hospital in Louisiana for quite some time and got out somewhat healed up. But they were reporting massively. When we first set up AlMartinRaw.com, on the Redstone Arsenal for 6 months of Dinnerstein infiltrating along with other defense intelligence agents and various CIA agents were infiltrating former U.S. generals and former colonels sitting down at the Redstone Arsenal selling weapons of mass destruction, missiles, missile component parts, high-tech weaponry, new devices that was like a little square can that they could aim at a tank 500 meters out there and shoot it with some kind of a thing that shot a ball out and disintegrated the tank. Bizarre weaponry that was costing U.S. taxpayers $1 million a pop to build. They were selling them to the Chinese for $250,000 a pop, right there at the Redstone Arsenal, giving them bills of lading where they could ship them.
Okay.
It goes on today.
Yes, and I thank you for that. I appreciate that. I've got somebody asking over and over again to talk about the CEOs of the banks, I guess. Bank CEOs.
A lot of the CEO banks, like J.P. Morgan, that's a perfect example of that one. The Reuben that was the head of Citicorp was another one. Of course, AIG, the largest insurance company worldwide, was proffered up from stolen insurance companies. They went in and broke them through reinsurance fraud and built that company. It's a huge financial block. They were all involved. The ones in the Illuminati world, the 100 bankers that control these 100 crime syndicates worldwide, are in control of 10,000 entities and men, should we say, 10,000 people answer to them. 5,000 to 6,000 are U.S. citizens that are their crime syndicate puppets. Most of the ones of these major corporations today, I mean, just like GE, Jack Welch, I mean, that guy could be put in prison. Daddy Bush's company, General Electric, Jack Welch, could be put in prison for his financial and security frauds and all the other stuff that he did and illegal activity. I mean, it's just, and the ones that are in charge of the current financial institutions, yes, tremendous amounts of them have been involved with and co-conspired under the RICO Act and the RICO laws to this criminal activity that they have done. If you look at Bank of America today, they have no assets. They have nothing on the books to back up anything. They're broke. All they're sitting there with is with a bunch of derivative papers tied to these artificial mortgages that never had any houses to begin with. And if you look at the mortgage problem, I want to mention one other thing so people tie this together and understand this mortgage problem. There's people, 3.5 million people were repoed on in 3 to 4 years. Elizabeth Warren, which they didn't make her the head of this new financial Wall Street, because they didn't want her in there because she was an honest gal. She's running for Senate now, thank God. Maybe she'll get in. But they didn't want her in there. Instead, they wanted a puppet in there to cover it all up, which they're doing. These mortgages that were duplicated on houses are sold. People were being repoed on until they put a stop to this just recently because of all the noise. And the attorney generals of the states were the ones that basically stopped it. They were having Citicorp, Bank of America, and other corporations coming in, banks coming in and saying, we're the mortgage holder on your house, and you haven't paid your mortgage in 2 years. And the owners are saying, Bull, I'm paying my mortgage to XYZ mortgage company down the street. Oh, no, we own your mortgage. We're repoing on your house. And they came in and took houses from people that were legitimately paying their mortgages on houses because of this duplication. So 3.5 million people lost their house in America in the past 3 years because of this financial fraud that they did. It shouldn't have lost their homes, Kerry.
I hear you. Okay. Well, thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Incredible amount of information. Let's see. Hold on one second. Okay, and I did ask you to look at the Neil Keenan lawsuit. I asked you today earlier.
Yes, I didn't have the opportunity to go into it deeply. I glanced over the one page that was an attachment that you had sent. It's very interesting. Okay. I want to, I'm not a lawyer. I can't really comment. I'm just, pro se litigant with a federal grand jury demand that they won't let me for a grand jury. And, I'm not a lawyer, but I've learned to, should we say, look at the laws. It's interesting.
Okay. All right. There's something to be said. Now, are you familiar with the gold in the Philippines?
I'm familiar with a lot of stuff, like the gold, the Marcos gold that was dumped offshore, dumped in the harbor part of it, and dumped on a reef out a little ways. I knew of a certain party. I don't want to mention his name. He's very dangerous, and I don't care to have him after me. I got too many enemies now, but he participated in it. That was the Marcos gold, if that's what you're referring to. Or are you referring to another block of gold that they moved?
Probably another block. Okay, let me.
Because the Philippines have been used as a staging ground for tremendous amounts of activity of the Bushes, illegal covert operations of state, they call it, but it's illegal. They aren't doing it under color of law. They're doing it under the color of the crime syndicate. But the Philippines, yes, has been a very huge place. Tremendous amounts of activity go on out of the Philippines of the crime syndicates.
Right. Okay. What about? Are you familiar with with actually where a lot of this money goes that they've been siphoning off from the American people, et cetera, and the drug money that going into black projects, secret space program, et cetera? Are you familiar with that?
Well, I'm familiar with because my former father-in-law that I did not know, and it's kind of a strange story, Kerry. I don't know what religion you are, but I'm a Christian. I believe in God, and I believe in the power of God, and I believe that the Holy Spirit is a very significant part of all of our lives. I did not know that I married into a satanic family. I did not know that these people were practicing Satanists. I didn't know that my ex-wife was trying to, should we say, run from her father in the activities. She was a victim of the activities of her father. Each time that she married, she had nothing to do with her parents. She had 3 siblings, 2 sisters, a brother. They had nothing to do with her parents. I didn't know this. But I found out in 1995 that my former father-in-law, Leonard Millman, I have a link up on the front of my website called Bush Satanic Worships. I did not know that he was holding what they call the summer-winter solstice ceremonies of the Illuminati bankers, the Satanists, some call them the vampires, etc. They've been around for years, the Knights Templar bankers. I did not know that he was hosting these parties in Sedalia, Colorado at the Kimball Castle. The Kimball Castle is very significant. Go to my website, front page, read right by a picture of Daddy Bush. It says Bush Satanic Worships. It's also under table of contents. I did not know the meaning of that incident that occurred in 1984, 3 weeks before my daughter was born. An entity, Baphomet, they call him, the gold-headed demon, huge thing, must have been 450, 500 pounds, looked like a pear from the neck down, came in, broke down the front door, thumped across the concrete floor, which was, and I was living in Dallas, and there's no basements down the concrete slabs. I hear this thing. I pop up, wake up. I got my pregnant wife at the time, 3 weeks from delivery, laying next to me nude. I'm nude. We're underneath the sheet. The back door to the bedroom with a private fence around the deck. The French doors are open. The moonlight. It was a cool night in Dallas, Texas. Very unusual that evening. And this thing bangs the front doors off the hinges, comes down the hallway. I'm hearing this thing. I wake up and I look, and here's this thing with, it was bizarre. Horns that twisted out of its head. It had a tail. It looked, some David Icke and others have described them as reptilians, so on and so forth. This was the devil. This is what they referred to as Baphomet. And I closed my eyes. I looked at it in the eyes, and it just had glowing red eyes. And I said, in the name of Jesus, and by the blood of Jesus Christ, I command you out of here now, Satan. And I heard this whirlwind, bam! I heard a bang right at the front door. I jumped straight up out of bed off of my back, hit my head on the ceiling and the ceiling fan, dropped right down, grabbing my pants. I still have a moonlight in there that I could see around the room. I'm running for a gun I hid from her underneath the file cabinet in my office, which was one of the bedrooms across the hall. I'm flipping lights on. I'm grabbing a gun. All of a sudden, she's grabbed hold of my belt where she's got a robe on. I'm going down the hallway with a gun in hand. God had already did the number on him. But I'm running down the hallway with a gun in hand, a little 25 caliber, and I'm going to shoot this thing. I look, and the front door's laying in the entryway, ripped off the hinges. The storm doors laying out, French doors on the front of the house. The storm doors laying out alongside the garage, an L-shaped ranch. And I just couldn't even believe. I just slammed the door back in the hole, hooked the lock. I'm going around praying to God, and I'm looking through the garage. I'm looking through the whole house for this entity. And all I'm doing is just running around praying on every window. And, oh, God, this was a wild situation.
Okay. Now I appreciate the story, but my question was about the secret space program.
I'll move up. Leonard Millman turned out to be what they call a J12 member. Do you know what that is?
MJ12, you mean?
J12.
Yeah.
They are the connections between us, the American government, or should we say the people, the government, and what they call the aliens, which was real. Roswell was real. Yes, this was the first encounter of humans to so-called aliens.
Right. Well,
Aliens are not aliens. They're the fallen angels that were cast out of heaven down here to the earth. Now, their flying saucers and their technology have been around. Drawings are in the pyramids. Pyramids have been built. You've got Atlantis and.
Okay. Well, you know, let me stop you right there so you don't waste a lot of time, because Project Camelot.
Black projects are being financed by these people. Tremendous black projects at Area 51. Now, listen to this. You had, I believe, John Lear, my friend.
Sure.
Okay, on one of your interviews.
Sure.
You've had a couple other people. One of my friends was the guy that built the flying saucer, Ed Slade, one of our U.S. scientists working for the CIA. They killed him back in October. I recalled the day I called, he was dead, being buried. I called him for a specific reason. Ed and I used to talk a lot. I met him in Vegas, got to know him. He stood up with Bogrites. They shot him with a weapon for speaking out. He was one of the 6 scientists, our U.S. scientists, that built flying saucers. Listen to this. A lot of people got this wrong. They think Area 51 is Groom Lake, Nevada. That's a test site for military and military weapons, our latest stuff, where John Lear flew as a test pilot. South of there, 60 miles, is called Papoose Lake. Papoose, P-A-P-O-S-E, I think it is, or
yeah, no, that's yeah, I know about
Papoose. Lake Nevada is that saucer base. That's where the aliens are. That's where they take humans. They traffic in children to a place called Beatty, Nevada, up Highway 95 to a warehouse. There's only 3 warehouses up there on I-95 and Beatty. Kids are in there every week, every Thursday night, packed, 200-300 kids, kidnapped from around the world, flown in there and taken to Beatty, where they're taken to Papoose Lake for experiments by these so-called aliens, of which Ed Slade, my friend scientist, had said he came to know Christ. He was a Jew. I talked to him. I said, Ed, I said, if you had known, I asked him a question. I said, are they aliens or fallen angels? He said, no, Stu, they're fallen angels. I said, would you have worked for them? Would you have done the work? He says, no, I would have never done the work. I've had top-level NSA people that have gone into the place. Daddy Bush used to fly in there all the time as president, vice president, so forth. His pilot was Harry Rupp, Heinrich Rupp, mentioned in the book Defrauding America, of which I contributed to, and a third of the sources that are in that book, defraudingamerica.com. It's on the front of my website, etc. Rodney Stitch wrote the book. Harry Rupp used to be George Herbert Walker Bush's personal pilot. He's dead now. He was a personal friend of mine. He said they were fallen angels. They weren't aliens. That's what we're up against. The people don't realize that I'm telling you tonight. You can believe it, take it with a grain of salt, whatever. What we are up against, in my opinion, now, and I know we're getting up on time here, we're down to the wire in the book of Revelations and Daniel and other prophecies. Even Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39 of the Old Testament prophesies of a war in the Middle East, a pre-Armageddon war. That's Iran. It's the only missing ingredient in Ezekiel. If you go in there and look, Persia in there. And if you look in the book of Revelations, we're just falling right down the line in the biblical scripture of end-time prophecies. I believe, personally, my own personal belief, is that we entered into the Great Tribulation and around the 2008 time frame. This is the reason all these prophecies are all lining up on 2012 and the Mayan calendar and so on and so forth. I believe we're going to have economic worldwide collapse in this first possible second week of March. And I also believe, I strongly believe, that these animals is all I can describe them as, the ones that are human, Bush, and the 100 Illuminatis, I really firmly believe that they are occupied and inhabited by these fallen angels and entities, and they're walking around in human form.
Okay. Okay, I appreciate that. Now, what I'm going to do here, and we are running out of time, and so there are so many different topics we could cover. I'm looking into the chat to see. Do you want to talk about the connection with the Bilderberg group? Someone's asking that.
The Bilderbergs are basically the Bilderberg group that meets and so on and so forth is the second level underneath the 100 Templar bankers, the Illuminati bankers. They're the next level. But you will always see in those Bilderberg meetings, you will see one of the European, you will see one of the American, or you will see one of the Oriental Illuminati bankers showing up at that meeting to give direction to the Bilderbergers, who then give it to the rest for their policy for that year. And what's really significant is that they get their marching orders from what they call the Council of 13. You wanna, if you're the devil, what's the devil always doing in the evil? They always mock God and mock Christ. Christ and his 12 apostles. You have the devil and the 12 Illuminati bankers that sit over in Jerusalem once a year and make policy. They pick them, their own Templar bankers here, the Illuminati bankers in America. They choose which ones are going to sit on the council for the year. The Europeans pick theirs, the Rothschilds, etc. They pick theirs, and then you have the Orientals that pick theirs, and they sit on that. What's significant, though, is one member always sits on that 12-member council, and that's Answar ben Shari of Israel, who is the head rabbi of the Jewish synagogues worldwide, who now is the head of the Heneghan, which the Heneghan is now has taken over and declares law now since I believe it's 2005 or 2006 in Israel. They make the laws in Israel.
Okay, very interesting. Oh God, what about the Vatican and the Black Pope?
The Black Pope is the current Pope. He's one of the Illuminati bankers. He was the Black Pope behind the scenes before Pope John Paul died.
Okay. Okay, you know his name?
Pope Benedict.
Okay, because there are two of them. There are two black popes. One gets confused for the other. There's one who's actually in power.
If you go to my site under table of contents off the front page and go down in the column that says Illuminati on it, you will see in there a picture of the Black Pope, what they defined as the Black Pope, and this current Benedict was one of his top level chiefs. And this was a guy they called Cloven Foot, because he walked with a cane and a cloved foot, supposedly.
Okay.
Some say he was the one that was possessed by the devil and was in human form. Now, he died, as I recall, it was around the 2004 time frame that he expired. And when he expired, I was on the phone with some really top people asking questions about this guy and getting confirmations. The statement that was made way back then, and it's made to me even a year ago by one source, an international source in the intelligence world, said that these 100 Illuminati bankers want to be the one. They want to be the one that's possessed by the devil, because they will be the one that will be in control of the world for this period of time.
Okay. Now, have you heard about the notion that there's supposed to be a false flag coming soon in the Gulf, basically utilizing, I think it's I forget, maybe USS Enterprise, this ship that is something of a derelict at this point. Have you heard that theory? They
always create a false flag incident. I don't say that. I'll take that back. They don't always create a false flag incident, but a lot of times false flag incidents are there for the purpose of brainwashing the people and so on and so forth. Let me tell you what's going to happen in the Middle East. This is not public knowledge. The NSA believes there's 20 nukes that Iran has. The CIA believes there's 19 nukes that Iran has. They know they have 19, but they're debating whether it's 19 or 20. They got them from the Russian mob when Russia broke up, before Putin came in and threw that Illuminati Templar banker that was selling them through the Jewish mob in Russia to Iran. Iran possesses those. They've never used them on anybody. The Iranian president actually wants peace in the Gulf. If you've heard him talk before the UN, point the finger at Daddy Bush and the Israelis over 9/11, he was absolutely correct in his statements. Iran intelligence knows what happened. Britain knows. France knows. Even our U.S. intelligence knows that we were attacked and it was the Israelis and Daddy Bush behind it to create a false flag, to take over Afghanistan and to take over the oil in Iraq. And, I mean, based on lies. The whole thing's been based on lies. You're going to see the psychopath Netanyahu, who answers to Anwar Ben-Shari, this Illuminati in Israel. You're going to see him get Israel wiped off the map because those nukes will reach Israel. I guarantee you, Israel is going up in a fireball. The Bible says in Ezekiel 38:39, which is the only prophecy to be fulfilled in the Old Testament of a war. The only one left to be, it could be debated between the theologians, etc. There's only one war left, and that's Ezekiel. And they're all mentioned in there. All the Middle East players, Egypt, Libya, Gomer, which is Germany, talks about Gog and Magog, which is Turkey and Russia. Russia has threatened the United States. China has threatened the United States. Stay out of the Gulf. Stay off of Iran. It's Anwar Ben-Shari of Israel, one of the head Illuminati bankers, Daddy Bush, and the others that want to fulfill these prophecies. I've asked myself several times, why did Daddy Bush go into the Gulf to begin with? They were trying to create this scenario clear back in 1991.
Sure.
They tried to recreate the scenario in 2001. And now they're in there trying to create the scenario again. God keeps delaying their time frame. I'm a firm believer that prophecies do not have to be fulfilled. If good men do nothing, the planet's going to go through hell on earth. If good men stand up to them and do something about this and put a stop to it, I believe our planet could remain for quite some period of time. But we're going to have to put an end to a lot of stuff. One of the things that they've done recently, and I can tell you this because I know too many people that took sick, including myself, for 2 weeks. They hit this country with the bird flu. And if you remember, the CIA lost an airplane, what was it, 4 or 6 weeks ago, and they found out they were spraying bird flu over China. China shot it down. It never hit the mainstream press over here, but it did press around the world. Think about what they're doing. Operation Cloverleaf, constant chemtrails.
Yes.
They're sick for this war. They're
Right.
getting the American people sick because if prophecies are fulfilled, go to Dmitry Duderman's prophecy. He was a Russian KGB agent sent over here and claims by God, and he was in the Siberian prison. Look him up. He was over here in 1994, given prophecies that God had given him to this nation, warning this nation, if we did not turn and remove this wicked, and did not return from the wicked ways that we were going, we were going to get pounced on, and he saw us get nuked about 30 times. His prophecies are out there. Dmitry Duderman, another prophet, Henry Gruver of Iowa, who's still alive. He had the same prophecies because Henry Gruver and Dmitry Duderman actually sat down face to face and shared these prophecies about what would happen to America. When Israel is attacked, we're going to be attacked, is what they claim. We're about ready for World War III. I had a top level NSA source and a top-level Pentagon source tell me that what's going to happen is that Israel attacks Iran. Everybody's going to be shooting off nukes. We're going to have a limited nuclear exchange worldwide. Russia, China, United States, France, Britain, Israel, and Iran are going to be popping off missiles. I don't even, quite frankly, if that happens, I don't want to come up alive on this planet after all that radiation is floating around this planet.
Okay.
It's not a good thing.
Yeah.
We need to stand up now, and we need to put an end to this. We need to make sure that the United States is not involved.
Okay,
Remember,
well, let me...
This is our government, but we are the people. We are the government, and it's a matter of us doing something about it. And I tell you, I know we're getting down on the time frame. Here's my opinion. Why not go in and do recall on every congressman and senator who signed the NDAA law?
Sure.
That says they can come pick you up and just detain you without trial. That's treason and sedition. Every one of them that signed the Patriot Act, treason and sedition. Go in and recall every one of them now before the election. Elections don't change things. Mm-hmm. Oh, folks, we'll handle it 4 years from now. Everything will change. Every 4 years they talk about, but nothing changes.
Sure.
They taking more block of the economy, and they keep putting us deeper in debt, and they keep putting us deeper and deeper into their new world order, as George Bush and Adolf Hitler have declared.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. Okay. I appreciate that. We don't, we have been going for a while here, and it is 2 hours. But at this moment, I'm going to ask you a few more questions. I don't want to keep you too much longer because I know you're a lot later there than we are. But
whatever time, if you can handle the noise in the background, we're under a tornado. Here's something else. We're under a tornado watch here in Kansas City in the middle of the winter, okay, which is just bizarre.
Okay.
And I want to tell you something. If you go to Jesse Ventura, because one of his sources that he's released tremendous amount of information is a source of mine, okay? I'm going to tell you something. He hit it right on most of his stuff. The key that got him kicked off of the TV show...
Conspiracy Theory.
Yeah, True TV. What got him kicked off was when he talked about HAARP. I had just released that. You can find on my internet site about 6 months before he put that out on the air. I put it out that they were able to take and move the jet stream. And it was 2 years ago in the spring. They moved the jet stream clear down from the Canadian border almost to the Gulf of Mexico. And if you remember in April time frame, there was ice all over Texas and Oklahoma, and it was just bizarre what had happened. They turned around and were able to move the jet stream again. Now they're able to move it at random. Look at your weather map. Look at weather.com. Take a look at how the jet stream is, how they're able to determine the jet stream. Watch where it comes off of all the time. HAARP Tower out of Canada. It's out of Alaska. It's the whole key, the HAARP Tower.
Okay.
They are creating a hole in the electromagnetic field. I heard about it from a scientist recently. They have created a hole that's like a quarter of the size of the planet. What is happening? If they're able to move the jet stream, they're able to cause, massive fires in Russia last year to burn out the food crops and so forth. They created droughts all over Texas last year that blew out the food crop. They're able to move the jet stream around and move it 500, 600 miles in 24 hours. That's weather wars.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very significant.
I agree with that completely. Okay, let's see. What about civil war in the U.S.? I've heard quite a bit about this. What about you?
Well, I'll tell you, if anybody wants to start a revolution, don't do it without me. I want to be there.
Okay.
Need a cleansing. Very bad, Kerry. We need to be removing these public officials and taking them out. I'm not going to say take them to gallows. I am a firm believer in justice, and I'm a firm believer in everybody having their day in court. But these congressmen and these senators and this Eric Holder, and that whole gang up there on the Hill, they've had control of the Justice Department since 1981 in the Attorney Generals. Every one of them have been dirty. Every one of them. And they need to take that Hillary Clinton and the rest of them, and they need to try them for all the crimes they've done. I mean, it's really easy to pick off Eric Holder. That's with all the Mark Rich connections and his law firm. That does it itself. There's tremendous amounts of RICO and other things that went on there. With Hillary Clinton, just pointing the finger back to the trust, all the Arkansas murders that she was involved with, and all the narcotics trafficking and weapons, she's in a prison cell. Obama and his bribes let Interpol put their stuff before a grand jury. He's gone on his $2.5 billion. I've heard he's accepted in bribes from Daddy Bush. Congress and the Senate. I could take and walk with you one congressman after another congressman, after another, after another, and after another, and senators. I'll tell you where to look as an example of how they got their bribes and payoffs. Go to my front page of my internet site, hit the table of contents. Scroll over to the third column on the right that's in alphabetical order. Scroll down to the end where you get past the Z. Look for the story about John McCain's wife making profits from war profiteering. Look at that story. It's very significant because it shows how John McCain was greased through his trusts that was set up to give his wife the front as far as the financial entity and so forth, and the trusts that were set up. One of the keys in here was the payments, that the way that they did it to these congressmen and senators. They did it through corporations. They came in and handed them a corporation. You vote for this, you do this. They threatened them, they extorted them, they've done everything to them. I mean, we got 20 of them up there that they haven't gotten to yet. These were the new freshmen. But look at the example on this. But they would hand them corporations and a trust in their daughter's name, and a corporation that is owned by the trust, and that corporation owned 3 or 5% of this apartment complex over here with 300 HUD units in it, getting Section 8 mod rehab, or they had done it with mod rehab money, but it's Section 8 money. The whole key is the congressmen and senators' families' trusts are the whole key, and what those trusts control as far as the ownership of those corporations and what those corporations own. And they all lead right back to Denver, Colorado, and Ohio in the ownership of these apartments. And the one big key name is AMCO, A-M-C-O, AMCO, the United States largest landlord of apartments, run by Kerry Cassidy, one of the individuals that was bundling up the mortgages along with Norman Brownstein and Larry Mizell in Denver, Colorado.
Okay. Let me ask you about Christopher Story.
I know who he is. He's a British intelligence agent.
Well, right, but he was releasing a lot of information a while back, and
information that Leo wanted. I worked with, and Tom Heneghan and even the Christopher Story put me in his book, and he put the Bush crime family flow chart in it. And Christopher Story had infiltrated me. Kerry, I've had British intelligence, I've had the Mossad, I've had Russian intelligence.
Okay.
I've had them all try to infiltrate.
What do you mean? Wait, I don't understand. So you're saying Christopher Story was what, infiltrating?
He was British intelligence, and he was putting out a lot of information. And the only reason that Christopher Story basically was putting out a lot of good information, he had infiltrated me because they were trying to find out him and the gal that Linda something, the Iowa Nursing Home Association, we called it, Linda Phantom, another British stooge out of Iowa. They were trying to infiltrate me way back in the 2001 time frame. I've had everybody try to get in.
Okay, what is your relationship?
Christopher Story. Christopher Story was only playing one role with the information he was putting out before he faked his death. He's up in Canada, is what I've heard. But before the death was faked,
Okay.
putting out a lot of information about the Reagan-Mitterand Protocols, which was my friend Leo Wanta breaking the Russian ruble and being assigned to run that operation, and then break the Federal Reserve. That's what Reagan commanded him to do. Okay?
Right.
A lot of information was put out. Like I say, if you go to one of the last books of Christopher's story printed, he talks about Baphomet, the goat-headed demon. He talks about them devil worshiping. I gave him a ton of stuff on that. I gave him, of course, the Bush crime family flowchart that I had created. He put it in his book. So I know Christopher Stormy. He's a British stooge. He's working for the Queen of England.
Okay.
But yes, they put out good information, and then they disappear off the map when
All
they
right.
don't want to be found anymore.
Well, I believe my intel says that he really was killed.
I've got him underneath a different name, and I forgot what name it is, but I understood from Interpol that he's alive and well up in Canada. Okay?
All right. Oh, okay, fair enough.
Leave it back. Okay.
I appreciate that. So let me see. Wow. Hold on one second here. What about Bin Laden? Do you know about? Do you have any? You know how they set up this fake thing with the SEAL Team 6, and they said they killed him.
Died in a Minneapolis hospital. Or some say Minneapolis. Some say they transferred him over to Dubai, or had transferred, or that he was in Dubai and died there. Some say he was actually transferred into Minneapolis. I'm not sure which story to believe, but I know that he died in the 2002 time frame,
Right.
because he had a lot of different intelligence community saying, Stu, you need to be getting us out. Bin Laden's dead. It's
Right.
official. The guy's dead.
Yeah.
You know, they got to have a boogeyman all the time, just like the Iranian president. He's the new boogeyman.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. So I'm going to let you go. I looked through the questions. I think that we've covered most of these areas as much as we can for the moment. I'm not seeing any really cutting edge questions coming through at the moment. I want to thank you very much, Stew Webb. You are a patriot, and you obviously have dedicated your life to getting the truth out. So I want to thank you for your service to humanity. And thank you for spending this time with us on this live stream. Hope we can do this again sometime.
We will do it again, and I take it as an honor to be with you. I honor you as well in the work that you do.
Thank you very much. All right, you take care.
You too. Thank you for having me.
All right, good night.
Good night.
So, Stu, I put your bio up there while people were waiting, and it's quite extensive, and I'm not sure I can even do it justice. So, why don't you try to talk about, your background, and I'd like you to be sure and cover it's extremely long, but I would like you to touch on the work you did with Mike Rupert. I also would like you to discuss, of course, the Bush crime family and all of that. And we really have time to go into whatever detail you would like to go into here on all these different subjects, as well as the Denver airport, your just sort of uncovering that, the underground base there, and it looks like you've also gotten involved in some mind control stuff. So let's just run the gamut here, and welcome everyone. This is Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot. I'm very happy to be here today with Stew Webb, and hopefully we will make it through without too many problems with the audio and the video. Okay? So go right ahead, Stu.
Well, I want to thank you for having me, Kerry, and I want to thank our mutual friend for, should we say, connecting us up. And but to get into my background for the edification of all the listeners, I'm still trying to get you up on the other screen, but I'm not getting you, Kerry. But my background was I married into the Bush crime syndicate I met the girl Kerry Millman in 1981, and in 1980, and in 1981 I married her, and she had a very estranged relationship with her parents. She claimed that her parents, being Jewish, didn't want anything to do with me because I was a Gentile and they wouldn't accept that. And she had been previously married. Since my divorce to her, she's been married an additional 2 times that I'm aware of. And all 4 relationships ended up in massive violence. We had a daughter. All the relationships were identical almost. 3 years of pretty much steady marriage, good relationship, and then the last turned to total hell. And during the last that I was married to her, she was pregnant during the period of time that she was pregnant, chased me through the house with a gun, attempted to murder our daughter after she was born, was ordered by child welfare in the state of Texas to undergo psychiatric evaluations within 7 days. I had taken her 3 shrinks. She would never go back. Her first husband took her to 3. Her third husband took her to a couple. Her 4th husband, etc. All identical. I've talked to all of them. Basically, what happened was she had disappeared the next day. This was in 1984 in August. She disappeared with my daughter. I contacted the HUD Inspector General, a man by the name of Chris Greer, Assistant Inspector General at HUD. And I'd given him information what I'd found, that here's all these HUD projects, these apartment complexes that Leonard Millman owned with other people. And that, I said, I looked at your Inspector General's report, which is a semi-annual report that the HUD Inspector General does before Congress each year. And it was showing Philip Wynn, Leonard Millman's partner, and they're getting unusual amounts of apartment units and so forth. And that had been mentioned previously, starting in about 1982-83. So it spun from there to where I was working with the HUD Inspector General, and he turned me over to the congressional investigators who were looking at this thing on their own, in a different angle, should we say. And I had gone to him, or worked with Lisa Phillips up on the Hill on what they call the Housing and Urban Development Committee, HUD Committee on Oversight. And so I started working with them, providing them the information. They wanted me to come public and testify before Congress, and I said, no. I said, this guy, I think, some kind of mob don. I'm finding all this property. I'm finding people that he's screwed all over, subcontractors that he's ripped off and different stuff. I prefer to keep my name out of it. Let's see what we can do about bringing them to justice. And they were robbing HUD heavily. They were getting, at the time, 8 out of 10 HUD dollars, which was a tremendous amount of money. And, of course, the congressional investigators were all over me on this. They wanted everything I had. I had polled over 10,000 apartment complexes at the time, had found 10,000 apartment units, each apartment being a unit, that they had basically stolen from HUD during this period of time, from 1981 up to 1988. So what had transpired is one of the gals on one of the committees, the HUD committee, had said, Stu, we've been brought to our attention by a reporter by the name of Pete Bruton, who later I contributed to the book. My name didn't appear. Margie Sloan's did with Time magazine. She was a researcher working for Peter, and I got her a job with Time because Time entered into the equation. Jonathan Beatty, that did the stories on Silverado and BCCI, which was all interconnected to my ex-in-laws. They owned Silverado, and they were involved heavily in BCCI and the Saudi Arabian Investment Corp with Charles Keating and all that. But she had said, would you like to talk to this reporter? Keep your name out of things. I said, sure.
So that's how I got connected up there, finding out about his savings and loan stuff going on. And then it turned out to be that I ended up connected through other people along the way, other investigators up on the Hill, a couple other committees that were looking at not only the savings and loan and HUD, but they were also looking at the Denver International Airport, which was turning out to be massive fraud. And of course, they built a secret underground, which I later found a whistleblower, one of the construction superintendents that came forth to me in 1994, and made a video. It's up on Facebook, on my Facebook page. You can click on the video and review the video. We put it on TV 59 in Denver. I think it was in 1994. I'm not sure of the month. But prior to this, back to the 1989 through 1991 time frame, I had the opportunity to go before congressional investigations on Silverado, on HUD, on the Denver airport, and on what they called the Keating 5. Actually, it's called the MDC 200. And this is where I got Jonathan Beatty with Time Magazine to pop a story that appeared in August the 14th of 1991. It's under stewwebb.com. Go to the front page, go to table of contents, and go in and look at savings and loans. In the third column over, that's in alphabetical order.
Okay, Stu, I appreciate this. You obviously have a huge background, and I am actually trying to get myself on the screen here. I'm not sure what's going on with this camera. It's kind of bizarre. At any rate, I think that this works more or less. I'm kind of like cut off in the corner. I don't even know if you can see me, but anyway.
I can't see it at all. The only thing I've got is a photo of you here.
Okay, that's fine. But
if you would like to reconnect and try it again.
No, it doesn't matter that much. They can see me on live stream just a bit in the corner, which is actually okay too. The idea here is though that you are kind of giving us almost a laundry list of incidents. And a lot of people who maybe weren't following your work all the way back then are going to be a little bit lost at this point, I'm afraid. So I just want to slow you down just a little bit. And I know that you're talking about the Denver airport and you were talking about HUD, and somehow those two connected. Can you back up a little bit and explain how? You became an investigator, or you started working with a private investigator?
No, not at all. I turned it into, from my building background, I just looked at it as a business, saying, I can't stop these people. I can't have a relationship with my daughter. I want to. I was concerned about my daughter and her health, of course, after her mother tries to murder her. And that's the reason I got into this, after being told it cost me $250,000 to ever see my child or more. So you move up from the 1984 time frame of initial divorce filings and the birth of a child. You move to the 1988 time frame. I'm going to HUD. I'm going to Congress. That's when we could get things done. And interlocking, my ex-in-law, Leonard Millman, owned a company called MDC Holdings, which owned so. I got served divorce papers within a number of days. She had a warrant for her arrest for mental disturbance. Her father bought her way out of it, basically. And, a year later, they terminated my parental rights in Dallas, Texas, on what they called a default judgment, where I was never notified. I went ballistics as a father, saying, you can't terminate my parental rights. This woman tried to murder our daughter, and she had a warrant. This judge, he covered it up. Judge Linda Thomas, Dallas, Texas. I found out within that last year in 1985 that basically her father had given the judge a loan out of Republic Finance, Republic Bank of Dallas, to her election campaign that she never paid back, which was an out-and-out bribe. But in Texas at the time, you could contribute to cases or contribute to a judge while you had a case pending before him, which is just really illegal. But this is what was allowed in Texas. But she had terminated 1,802 men's parental rights that year. She was a lesbian. She had only terminated 2 women's rights. She was doing it for money. This judge was just totally out of control. But I had missed the 30-day appeal time. I was being told by attorneys in Dallas it would cost me $250,000. I'd have to double
$75,000 contribution and make a contribution for $150,000 plus. They wanted themselves $100,000. I didn't have that kind of money. I was just a small building contractor doing my thing in life and making better than the average wage and so forth. And that's what basically started me off in my quest and looking at the background of my former father-in-law. Because I figured if I shut the money off, I had an attorney tell me that I'd spend $1 million ever trying to have a relationship with my own daughter, and that I might as well hang it up, either that or plan on spending $1 million. And I thought everybody was nuts down in Dallas, so I said, I'm out of here. And I'd grown up in Kansas City, Missouri, Independence area at the time, did a lot of work in Overland Park, Johnson County, and from the 1975, had a real estate license when I first got in business. I met her when I was 25, got in business when I was 22, building new homes. I was aggressive. I moved to Dallas because of the point structure here in Kansas City. We were paying 16 points to close a house, where in Dallas and Denver and other places there were 12 points. Now, before I married this girl, I'd met her parents one time in Denver, Colorado, because I was telling her, Kerry, that I wanted to live in one of the two cities because of the point structure and the business and so forth. That's how I basically got involved. By 1986, I'm going to the FBI with information on her father money laundering. During the period of time that I was married to Kerry Millman, she had mentioned in the last 3 months of the marriage, because it was so rocky, she made a comment that her father was a mob don. And, of course, I'm like, oh, yeah, thanks a lot for telling me now your dad's some kind of mob don. And I never knew any of this. But I began to look at the background of his business partners, mainly Larry Mizell and Phil Wynn, because when I visited with her folks, met them the one time before I married her, they were having a big party. Phil Wynn goes to Washington to become the FHA commissioner. And he was the one later I got an indictment on in 1991 through the independent prosecutor, Arlen Adams, who was appointed on the HUD scandal as a result of me. The documents are up on my website, stewwebb.com. It's under table of contents in the far right column. You can see a letter from Congress thanking me on the congressional investigations, etc. But Arlen Adams was appointed as a result of me. But in the 1986 timeframe, I'd gone to the FBI. Kerry had never been arrested in my life for anything. I mean, I got a couple speeding tickets and maybe a stop sign, something like that, but I'd never done anything wrong, and I don't even break the law today. I just try to live what God would want us to do and do the right thing. But all of a sudden, I'm being arrested on DUIs. I wasn't even drinking. It was just constantly blowing in breath tests and proving my innocence, but yet I was being hauled in. And it was all because I went to the FBI and turned in my former father-in-law, Leonard Millman, not having any idea who this guy was. And to explain to everybody who he is or what he was before his reported death in 2004, he's one of the 100 Illuminati bankers, it turned out to be. One of the 100 richest people on the planet. The one of the 100, the 1%, less than 1% actually, but one of the 100s that control 90% of the bulk of the wealth of the world now. Now, to give you an idea, the timeline escalates. By 1989, I'm still going after this guy, thinking if I shut his money down, he's illegal. She told me he's a mobster of some type. I'm looking at every kind of background, everything I can find, from my real estate building background, looking at all those bare land tracts. And I'm finding that this guy has like $4 to $5 billion worth of bare land in Denver, Colorado, and all over the Colorado area. I'm saying to myself, how can this guy have $4 to $5 billion in his partner Albert Rose and Milrose Construction and so forth, Milrose Investment Company, when Forbes magazine's reporting the richest people to be $1 billion, $1.5 billion, and these guys are sitting out there with several billion in land tracts. So I dug, and I finally, after going to the FBI a second time, repeated arrest, all charges dismissed against me. In many cases, they did what the prosecutors call nollis pro, where they actually dropped the charges, spending $2,000 in bonds and towing in my vehicle and playing all the game. I'd already racked up by 1991, I think it was. I'd racked up nearly $50,000 in attorney fees and so forth. I racked up another $50,000 in long-distance phone calls digging on this guy. Secretary of State's office consistently and so forth in Colorado and other states around there, Nevada, where I'd learned that he was doing business in. So this was move on into the time frame of 1988.